to Jennifer. We've got the opportunity to ask questions, which is great. So does anybody have any questions for Jennifer?
I'm Janice Kelsey with Solar Cities, and we do home-scale biodigesters. We do educational programs. How do we fit into this larger program, this plan? Education and nonprofits. Either one. We're often asked to come to countries to do projects, but we don't have the funding to do the educational programs. You know, we get asked by many places, and we can't possibly, we can do them, but we don't have that funding.
Well, that's a big question is getting the funding for the educational program. Right. So I completely agree, and I don't know to what extent the World Bank has funding available. Right. I think the way you work is not normally directly with companies, but perhaps you can explain how.
Well, the World Bank Group, I mean, we do have the private sector arm, which is the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, and we have the guarantee, the MEGA guarantee arm of the World Bank. But we also work a lot with the public sector. But we do have quite a bit of trust funds, what we call them, which are smaller grant resources, which are basically out there to help build the capacity. Usually we are very much focused on governments, but the important thing is also working through universities and developing training programs. So not a one-off training program, but how do we actually, build on existing training programs that might exist in research institutes. I'm not exactly sure which type of training you're talking about. I'm happy to talk with you afterwards.
That would be great.
Because I think for us, everything we want to do is to go to scale and institutionalize what we're doing within the countries. And I think that's what's important. Exactly. But happy to chat with you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent, really encouraging, thank you. All I wanted to say, sorry, I'm Christopher Moulton. I'm Chairman of Organic Power, Director of Biomethane Limited, been in the business probably longer than most people in the room. What I wanted to tell you, that was the first Global Biogas Congress, some 16, 17 years ago. What has changed now? And could I suggest it's the fact that the oil companies are no longer fighting us, but on our side? Do you see that as being the case?
Do you want to answer that first or me? I mean, I think what has changed now is that the planet's on fire. I mean, I hate saying it, but I think it really is. We are just seeing the devastation and the impact of climate change. It's being felt. I know 5 years ago, we're all very hopeful. Let's just focus on mitigation. Right now, we need to also focus on the whole adaptation. We're seeing the shocks, the floods, the droughts, the heat waves, right? So I think part of it is the world hopefully waking up to the climate crisis that we do have. At the same time, I do think there's a much more greater movement towards looking at the whole cycle, renewable approach to circular economy. But at the same time, the industry is growing and you're showing solutions. And so when I see biogas solutions at scale in Europe in particular, I think that's actually really important. When you have people like Franz Timmerman, you have the EU, you have other countries putting out front, or even Rick Duke in the United States, or John Kerry, people speaking about the methane pledge, speaking about biogas. I see that much more in the solution space than not necessarily the fossil fuel industry investing or divesting. But maybe you have a different take on this, Charlotte.
No, I completely agree. I would also say that the fact that the big issue with biogas has always been that all of its benefits have never been priced. So the economic model has never really stacked up from a purely financial point of view. But we're now starting to see that carbon prices going up. Someone was talking about £100 a tonne the other day. And we're starting to get recognition. It was interesting, the mechanism you talked about in terms of giving a credit for capturing methane. Did I understood? I mean, that's fantastic. It's the first I've heard of giving the industry reward for capturing a harmful emission. So it's all about the economic model being able to include the value that the industry is delivering, and that has been changing over time. And recognition of the value of the industry has been changing over time, quantifying the benefits the industry can deliver. So I think it's just a lot of people around the world talking about the benefits that the industry delivers, and over time, more and more plants slowly being built. And obviously, once you start to get case studies showing how it's happening, then other people can say, oh, it's doable, it's possible, that's how you do it. So we just have to speed it up. I mean, you know, that your event 16 years ago, well, we've only got 6 years, 9 months left to meet the global methane pledge. So the focus has to now be very much on speed.
Thank you very much.
Hello, it's Amy Wong here from Credit Suisse. And Charlotte, thanks for setting the scene. And Jennifer, thanks for your speech. It was very energetic, and we can feel your passion about the topic. I'd like to take the advantage of just having you here to hear your perspective. You touched on the difference between the European and the US approach to giving subsidies. One tends to be more of a carrot, and one tends to be more of using a stick. And then also, parallel to that, you've heard a lot of competition now for green industrial policy. Is one region losing out on competitiveness to the other because some of these subsidies are arguably against competition rules globally? So I don't know if it's fair to put you on the spot, given you're from the World Bank, but love to hear what your organization, what you think about, you know, how are they going to resolve the regional differences, and how do we ensure that, what's being done is the best for both regions in terms of moving clean technology forward?
No, thanks. That's a good question. It reminds me when President Macron went to the U.S. recently, he was complaining about the U.S. IRA. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, was, excluding Europeans and, was promoting the American industry. I think I appreciate, Charlotte, what you said is really what is the economics all comes down to what is needed, the investment, the economic model. And I was with our colleagues at EBRD yesterday, and it's exactly what they said. I said, we can now invest in biogas because before it was not economically viable. Basically, it was too expensive. And there were other solutions because there was no adequate pricing on carbon. He said, now with the EU regulations, we actually can, because countries do have targets and they get sanctioned if they don't meet their targets, it makes it a lot easier for us to invest. But when you do set these types of targets, binding targets, you do also need to provide some kind of financial support, or unlock new ways of financing through carbon credits, right? But there does need some kind of incentive. So the EU does come through with a huge amount of subsidies. So the U.S., I think both of them are fortunate to have governments who are putting forward ambitious targets and money and subsidies into the system to encourage investment, right? So I don't see one being at a disadvantage over another, but I do see where countries, what we're really seeing now is countries outside of Europe, especially the emerging markets that we're supporting, it's become much more difficult for them maybe to be able to do business with Europe because of all the, if they don't have the right, being able to actually even quantify the carbon offsets and to quantify the carbon into their whole export. So it's a good question, but I'm not concerned about unfair competition from one economy to another. I think anything we can do to stimulate investment in renewable energy is fantastic. We just need to document lessons and share experiences.
I don't know whether we have any other questions. There's one over there. Just while you're getting the mic over there, I've got a quick question as well. One of the things that I've found astonishing is the amount of subsidies and sort of tax breaks that have been going to the fossil fuel industry, and the fact that that's increasing, which is just nuts. What does the World Bank's view on? Does it have any influence on that?
No, it's a fantastic question. I mean, we're calling them the harmful subsidies. I mean, it's the fossil fuel industry, it's the fertilizers, it's still many, many harmful industries. It's just incredible the amount of money. If we could just reallocate some of those subsidies to renewable energy, it would unlock, it would really unlock huge amounts of problems. But the political economy, and there's been quite a lot of work, we do quite a bit of work on, what is the political economy of any kind of reform subsidy? And we're trying to incentivize countries now to reduce some of the harmful subsidies. And we do it, we have this instrument called a development policy operation. So we now are looking at whole of economy type of approaches of how are you going to incentivize a lower carbon trajectory, how do you reduce emissions, and you look at subsidies and you try to go country by country. It's very, very hard, though, to ask countries to reduce fossil fuel subsidies. You can just imagine the protests in the street. It's like reducing, subsidies on water. If you have subsidies on water, it goes to the rich, not to the poor or not served. we don't do it. And then we looked at the more advanced economies that have so many subsidies and they keep on going up higher and higher. So we are working very hard on it. We're analyzing it. We're incentivizing ways that we can reduce the subsidies. But if we don't have the high emitting countries starting off and leading the way, it's very, very difficult for us then to go to other countries and ask them to do the same. But that is a critical, critical issue. It is, it is amazing.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Charlotte and Jennifer, for your presentation. Same situation, very energetic, you know, and give a lot of an opportunity for us. Our company called Infinity Biogas, we came from Ireland just today to find some information and know-how about this business. The story we have is like we have a connection to the one of the country, I'm sorry that I've not mentioned that yet, in South America. Our contact is going to talk to the people on the government level and provide basic information about our proposal. There is manufacturer who is able to provide, you know, the biogas plants, but we just recognize that there is no process. So if you could advise us, you know, what we can do with maybe your cooperation to make it happen, you know, how we can start to work, to whom we should contact to you or from your organization to make the process and make or deliver the full service, not only biogas, you know, and start to create one or two, but, you know, start to build the process for the whole country.
I'm happy to chat with you afterwards. It's probably country specific, but it's interesting because I've done a number of overseas assignments in Brazil and Vietnam and Bolivia, and we have quite a few times that you have suppliers coming or manufacturers or industry experts who want to invest in the country, and they don't know how to start. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, that you really need to look at it, you know, where you also can look at what government's doing. But I'm happy to chat with you afterwards.
The story is like, you know, we just start in this business, but we are passionate about that. Just had the meetings last weekend in Ireland with the people who would like to invest. We have some issue over there because, you know, the lack of the legislation. Yeah. Regarding to this country, like I said, those guys have been in London recently. So they just recognized what we are doing and they invited us to fly here to talk. But unfortunately, you know, at that time we couldn't. So it's a great an opportunity for us to speak to you, you know, and make it happen.
Perfect. I'm happy to chat afterwards.
Thank you.
So we've reached, unfortunately, the end of our time. But Jennifer, thank you so much for coming to join us. The World Bank has a big role to play, I think, here. So really appreciated it. And as somebody else said, we really see your passion for making a difference here as well. So thank you very much. And I'm sure all of you will thank Jennifer as well for joining us.